Hello everyone, and welcome to the Zelda Board Podcast. I am your host, HextupleyooDOT, and with me here is spigelwii.
I'm your co-host tonight, ladies and gentlemen.
And Zyber is not able to join us today because, work? I don't know. What is he ever doing in these episodes?
May he rip in peace.
And we also don't have a guest at all this evening, so it's just going to be Spiegel and I. So that'll be fun.
We are screwed.
Oh man. Can we fill a podcast on our own?
Well, we will find out. It's going to be about 10 minutes today, but you know.
At least that's
we'll do our best.
A welcome change of pace from the 50-minute episodes we've been doing. The last one was over an hour, wasn't it?
Yeah, you know what? On New Year's Eve, we should do like an all-night podcast and just put up whatever we come up with. I just thought
we should just do a live stream. That'd be fun.
Oh gosh, that'd be terrible. I think of all the stupid things we'd say that we wouldn't be able to edit out.
Oh goodness, we'd be tired. We'd be staying up late. Oh goodness. Anyway, what other bad ideas can we come up with in this episode?
I've got plenty. I got plenty of bad ideas. You'll hear them all.
Oh goodness. So first thing I wanted to do is have you talk a bit about your visit to IGN, which if you've been on the Zelda board, you probably heard of it. But if you're not part of the illustrious Zelda forums here on IGN, then you don't know what happened. So you want to tell us a bit about kind of how you managed to land a tour and sort of a lunch date with the IGN staff?
Okay. Well, first, let's not use that phrase. Let's not use the phrase lunch date. But first, I want to preface it sort of by going into just like about IGN in general. Is on IGN, we obviously have the Zelda board, and that's where, you know, we do all of our posting, and it's just a great community with a bunch of great people. And you know, one day I was just messing around on the Zelda board, and I saw a link to the Nintendo Voice Chat podcast. And one of the things that I'd been kicking around in my head for a long time was that I thought it would be interesting to do a podcast as a community on the Zelda board, because we all got so many interesting things to say, and there's so many things to talk about in gaming that maybe we could do a podcast. But one day I found this Nintendo Voice Chat podcast, and I started listening to it, and I'm like, wow, you know, this is a really well put together podcast. I bet I could do something like this. And obviously we were totally wrong. But but I discovered Nintendo Voice Chat on the Zelda board, and I just became a really big fan of the show. I listen to it every week. It's a great show, by the way. You know, if you're done listening to us, go ahead and go download Nintendo Voice Chat, because I can't recommend it highly enough. Now that I'm done with that tangent, I just want to say, so the hosts of Nintendo Voice Chat, the people that are on there basically every week, I follow them on Twitter. And I was going to San Francisco for my honeymoon, which is where the IGN headquarters are. And I jokingly tweeted at the GM, Per Schneider of IGN. I said, you have any ideas of things I can do while I'm in San Francisco? And he tweeted back at me. I was surprised enough at that, like he'd even bother. But he said, like, oh, you know, you could go eat, you know, go to Alcatraz, scare your wife into doing her tax returns or something. And I was like, oh, you know, I jokingly replied back, I'm like, oh, you know, I was hoping that you'd invite me to a tour of IGN and, like, you know, be on the Nintendo Voice Chat podcast and all this. And then he tweeted back, he's like, yeah, let's do something like that. Let's do lunch on Tuesday the 28th. And I was like, what? It was so unreal to me that this was even happening. So
yeah,
at first I thought he was joking. So I sent him a message, a private message, and I said, are you sure? Like, were you serious about this? He's like, yeah, you know, we do this stuff occasionally for big fans. And I'm like, wow, this is surreal. So that's sort of how it happened. I can't remember the rest of your question, but that's sort of how I got into it.
Very cool. I should start tweeting at people that I'm into, so see if I can get any dates that way. I don't know. I'm supposed to stop saying dates, aren't I?
I don't know if you're going to try to get dates with celebrities in South Carolina. Are there any celebrities in South Carolina?
Probably not. No.
I don't know. You got Michael Jordan lives there.
Does he?
Well, oh wait, no, that would be North Carolina, huh? Because that's where Charlotte is.
Yes, that's north.
Okay, well, never mind. So you have nobody.
You're great at geography.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to go on a lunch date with Michael Jordan anyway. Seems like it'd be kind of intimidating.
Yeah. No.
What were we talking about?
We were talking about video games and Zelda board podcast and stuff like that. You remember that show that you run?
What are we doing? I don't run it anymore. I got demoted. I'm just the
That's
co-host.
right. Now you're just a co-host. Well then, I guess I'm the one asking the questions. Next question.
Go ahead.
So I've always wondered, are the IGN staff kind of like down to earth kind of people, or do they kind of feel, like they're big people, obviously to us? So are we little to them, or what?
The cool thing about the whole situation is obviously IGN. It's not as the message boards and stuff, like they're not as big as they used to be, because people have sort of as the media digital age, I guess, whatever, has gone into this sort of like quick rapid fire type Twitter thing. People have sort of gravitated away from message boards, but IGN is still a very big community, and it's really cool to me that the higher up people, in response to your question, they're very appreciative of their fans, and they're very down to earth, and it's really cool. It was really cool for me to just walk in, and I walked into the bottom floor of the building, and the guy and the security guard was like, "Hi, do you have a meeting with someone?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm meeting with Per Schneider of IGN." He's like, "Oh yeah, Per mentioned you." And I was like, "What? Are you serious?" It wasn't even an appointment. Like, Per just came down and said, "Oh yeah, I'm meeting like these two guys today." So that was really cool. To just be like one. I'm doing a really bad job of elucidating this here, but I kind of went into the office, and I stood there, and they're like, "Oh, just make yourself at home, and they'll be out in a couple minutes." And then they came out, and it was like totally normal. I didn't feel nervous at all or anything, because they don't treat themselves like they're these big important people, and it sort of goes away after a little bit. So I thought it was really interesting to see that these guys were just normal guys. And I know people always say that about celebrities. Oh, they're just people, but they really are just people. And as a big fan of the show, it was just kind of weird for me to experience that in person.
Yeah, that is interesting, because like when you think of kind of these smaller gaming outlets, like, I don't know, Game Explain, just people who are on YouTube, and then you think of IGN or GameSpot, they're like the big dogs. So you kind of think they're kind of on a completely different level than us.
Exactly.
But it's kind of cool that, they're not really.
IGN is like, when I used to think about IGN, I used to think that they were the like internet gaming site.
Yeah.
Like, there's no other site that I get my news from, really, except for like my Nintendo news and like specifically Nintendo related stuff. But if I want a general overview of the industry, like IGN is it for me. So yeah. It's just it's really surreal.
I know that you are sort of like an aspiring writer. You like to write a lot. The sitcom is a thing still, right?
No, we're not 21,000 years now.
But so you like to write, and you like video games. So naturally, let's write about video games.
Yeah.
And how did your visit to IGN kind of give you a sense of, like, did it give you a sense of what the industry is like and what it would be like to work at a gaming media giant?
I think, it definitely provided some perspective. I didn't actually get that much of a taste of what the writing, like the article writing stuff was like. I got the impression that sort of IGN is not just about writing articles. Like, they have a bunch of web designers in there. They've got people designing apps for other platforms and stuff. Like, they were working on their Xbox One app for IGN, and that's going to be out this December, I think they said. But I went. There were like three distinct sections in the office, and one of them was the kind of the writers area, the people who edit and write articles and stuff like that. And they had the podcast studios and things. So I guess I sort of had a little piece of like what it looks like to be a writer at IGN. There's just a lot of stuff going on, and it's an office, but it's a fun looking office. And I'm not sure if they just dressed it up for me because I was visiting, but it looks like all these people are having a really good time, enjoying their jobs, enjoying what they do. And I think writing for video games is sort of like writing for anything else. Like, if you're a sports journalist or you're just writing at a newspaper, people just like to have fun. They like to embrace what their passion is. And if you're passionate about games, like, you probably definitely want to go look to write at a place like IGN, because it seems like the perfect atmosphere to do something like that.
Yeah, I was looking at the photos that you posted in the off-topic thread, and I saw some of the desks there with all their really cool desk toys, all this nerdy stuff, and I was like, oh,
yeah, it's all over.
Doesn't look anywhere near that cool. So,
yeah, I made a comment like, oh, it looks like this now. It's going to be even worse once Amiibos come out, right? Like, people are just going to have their desks just like covered in Amiibos.
Right, and they have consoles. Like, sometimes they're at their desk, right? So
Yeah.
do they get things done? You know?
I never got the chance to ask, and if I go back, that's a question I'm definitely gonna ask. Like, when do you guys ever get things done? Because on the podcast, the NVC, they're always talking about like, oh yeah, I went to go play this game, and I'm like, when were you playing this game? In the office? Like, was this for your job? Do you just like do whatever you want and then like write about it? I don't know. So it's interesting. I'm sure there's more of a structure to it than that, obviously, but just looking from the outside, like barely on the inside, just visiting, it was kind of hard to get a perspective on that specifically.
Well, it sounds like you had a fun time, and I
think I had a little bit of fun. One other thing I wanted to mention was I got a really good piece of advice at lunch from Jose Otero. Actually, Brian Altano was talking to me about it a little bit too. As I was talking about my career and how I didn't really love what I'm going into, which is plant science. That's what I'm going to college for anyway. And Jose just said, like, screw the job. Don't get a job. Get a career. Do something that you want to do and like just really pursue it. And that's something I really took to heart. And I'm like, I think I really am going to start looking into other avenues of things I can do with my degree that aren't actually related to my degree. Just sort of use it as a way to open doors. And it was a really good piece of advice. And it was actually one of the best things I got out of the trip because it really helped provide some clarity in my own life. So go to IGN. It will solve all your problems. That's my takeaway.
Yeah, I'm always a big proponent of trying to pave your own path, not necessarily doing the road most traveled. Like,
right.
I went to school for graphic design, which is at least somewhat related to creating graphics and creating stuff for video games, but I'm kind of doing my own thing, kind of going the indie route. So it's definitely interesting to see. I'd be curious to see what kind of avenues there are for people who want to get into journalism, besides going to college and getting a degree.
Journalism, yeah. I'm not really sure what it would take. I mean, I can't remember. Somebody at the table had mentioned how they didn't actually go to school for journalism, and I can't remember who it was. But I mean, so it's definitely possible. You just have to have the will to succeed and the drive to succeed. And even Jose even said, like, it was a grind, at first, like trying to outwork people and making sure that I got the job, and then just working harder than everybody, basically, is what he said.
Yeah.
So.
Well, hey, maybe this podcast is the start of something in that direction, Like some people just create YouTube channels and then they get big. Who knows?
Well, maybe the day that our subscribers pass Nintendo Voice Chat will be a personal success for me. But I'm not even putting myself in the same sentence at this point. Like I brought it up. I brought up the Zelda Board podcast at lunch, and I immediately I shouldn't have said anything. That's embarrassing. What if they wanted to hear it or something?
Oh, but, maybe they'll listen to this episode.
Oh, maybe.
Oh, goodness.
Okay.
But yeah, so I'm glad you got to do that. I'm definitely jealous of you, and I want to be able to experience something like that at some point in my life. So I'm gotta start tweeting at people.
It was totally awesome. Definitely tweet at everybody you follow, because you never know what could happen, as I found out.
So let's move on to a little bit of news. There's not a lot to talk about.
No. Kind of a slow week. Although we could talk Nintendo financials. They put out that report today for anyone who cares.
Oh yeah, that's right. Didn't they actually turn around their loss to an opposite profit?
Nintendo is now officially profitable again. Although I don't really understand how it works, but yen is down or something, so they actually posted a loss. But they're but in yen they're operating at a gain. I don't really understand, but. The point is that they lost a lot of money and now they're not losing money and they're making money again. So that's very good. Even though the 3DS is super struggling in terms of hardware, although they've had 4 million sellers this year or something just on that console alone or something. And then the Wii U, obviously, finally starting to sell a little bit better. Everyone's buying the good games. So
they were saying Mario Kart and Smash are selling steadily, which is, I guess, not the most glorious adjective to use to describe the sales, but it seems steady is better than what it has been, right?
Steady is definitely better than Watch Dogs selling 4 million units and then selling nothing, for the rest of eternity. Because Mario Kart 8, sells 2 million in its first month, and it's sort of slowly collected another 700,000 or something since its release. And it kind of keeps interest in the game up, which is good. It's always good when interest in the game is up because it means that people are going to be more interested when you announce a sequel because you're constantly remembering, oh yeah, that last game was really good. So
yeah, that's very true. And plus, with DLC coming out soon, that's going to kind of renew interest in the game because I mean, we've been playing Smash Brothers rather than Mario Kart. We used to play Mario Kart online a ton, and now it's more Smash Brothers. But speaking of Mario Kart DLC, yay segues.
Oh, that was good. I didn't even see that coming. That was awesome.
The Excite Bike track for Mario Kart 8 has been given a trailer, and it looks really cool. I was actually surprised you hadn't seen it before we started recording.
I don't hear about things anymore because I'm too busy.
Yeah, well, I guess that's a good state to be in, actually focusing on classes and whatnot. But
forget that stuff.
But I don't know if you picked up on this when you watched it, but I think the interesting thing about that track is that portions of the track are actually randomly generated each time you load the track, except for on time trial. So every time you play it, it's going to be different. And basically, I was watching the Game Explain analysis, and like kind of like how the track editor worked, you can kind of see the actual track pieces as separate segments, and those are going to like swap out every time you play. So I'm excited about that. It seems like a really fun, hectic track, and everything's like a straightaway. So you're going to be able to hit people with green shells out the wazoo. It's going to be crazy.
Sorry, did you mention track editor? What was that you just said?
Oh, you know how in Excite Bike you had a track editor?
Oh, yeah.
So they're kind of just like alluding to that.
I thought you meant Mario Kart. I was like, what?
If only.
Only. That's by the way, that's coming in Mario Kart 9. No, not DLC. That's too complicated.
Yeah, that's
for DLC.
true.
But that's coming in Mario Kart 9. You watch.
Also interesting.
Oh, wait. One other thing. We still don't have a release date. It's coming out this month, or by the time you're listening to this, it's coming out in November this month. Where's the release date? Nintendo? Where is it?
Yeah, I mean, is it going to come out before or after Smash? I mean, they've already given us a Smash.
It's got to be before, right? It can't be after.
It seems like if they do it too close, it's gonna cause some competition. Like they need to space them out a bit.
Like almost indirectly, right? Like people are like, well, I could get Smash, but I've got a bunch of Mario Kart 8 DLC to play now. Like, I think it'd be a huge mistake to release them both on the same date.
But on the other hand, I guess Smash is probably going to be the system seller more so than Mario Kart 8. So I don't know, maybe they'll supplement each other in some way. I don't know what Nintendo's thinking.
I mean, maybe you think that they'll pick up Mario Kart 8 like with Smash Brothers because the DLC is coming out that day. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know.
Are parents gonna buy their kids 2 games for Christmas with their new system? Seems like pushing it a bit, but who knows? Some parents are generous.
Yeah, a lot of people are richer than my parents were. And, I mean, and hey, this is why Nintendo has a marketing department, and we're 2 guys talking on the internet. I mean,
I don't put that much stock in the marketing department these days.
They came up with Wii U, so yeah, maybe they're not. They don't totally know what they're doing, but
right.
Either way, I still think they'll make the right decision in the end.
Well, one good thing they did, the marketing department for Nintendo of Europe, I guess. I don't know if they're actually responsible for this.
These segues are too much for me to handle right now.
But they've pushed the European release date from December to November 28th, which was happy.
For Smash Brothers.
Yes. And
so good for you, European people. We still get the game earlier than you, so.
It's only like a week earlier than it was before, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, we still get it first, so haha.
Yeah. Ha ha ha.
And I guess there isn't really much else to talk about as far as news is concerned.
I can't think of anything. Bayonetta came out last week. We didn't talk about it on the podcast.
Oh, yeah. Did you buy it already?
Yeah, I bought it. I haven't had a chance to play it because I've been on my honeymoon and I've been doing homework and stuff. So I need to catch up on Hyrule Warriors, and I need to do that Wind Waker book club thing too. So.
Oh yeah, that thing.
Yeah, that thing.
Well, I guess we're going to take a break for now, and when we come back, we're going to talk a bit about something that really fits the Halloween spirit. So stay tuned for that. All right, everyone, welcome back. You just heard a song from our favorite game, Majora's Mask. At least Spieg and I think
Yeah,
we can
it's
say
everyone's
it's our
favorite
favorite game. But so everyone, if you're listening to this when we released it, then it's either Halloween right now or it just was Halloween for you. So we decided let's do an episode about scary stuff, and
Spooky.
There's no scarier There's no scarier game than Majora's Mask, at least in the Zelda franchise. And Majora's Mask is definitely my favorite Zelda game. I think you can say the same thing, and a lot of people from the Zelda board can say that.
I think a lot of people would say that at this point. It's gotten so, like, it's almost overrated at this point. It's everyone's favorite game.
It definitely is overrated by now. I mean,
I don't know.
It's reached that point in its Zelda cycle, right?
Yeah, people are going to start hating it a year just like Ocarina of Time.
Yeah, but it's definitely, like, compared to the other Zelda games, it's one of the darkest, if not the darkest Zelda game there is. And I think, like, one thing about the game that makes it that way is that, unlike the other Zelda games, I mean, you're always told in a Zelda game that the fate of the world hangs in the balance, right? And you kind of take their word for it, like, oh yeah, Death Mountain has a cloud of smoke over it and whatnot, but you go into Hyrule Field and there's happy music, and everyone's still smiling, and go to Kakariko, it's all peaceful and whatnot. You don't really feel like the world is going to die.
Nothing ever actually happens, right?
Right. I mean, you could leave the game on for a year. You, like, burn your N64 out, but nothing would happen, right?
Right.
Everyone would still be just fine. But you go to a game like Majora's Mask, and there's this giant moon staring at you with a really creepy face, and every, like, 20 minutes it gets, like, 3 times bigger. It's definitely one of the creepiest Zelda games.
It's literally right there. Like, if you stop playing, like, if you just did what Hex said and left the game on for a day or whatever, like, game over, you're gonna die. And it's an interesting dynamic that really hasn't made its way into many video games. Pikmin, I guess, would be the other notable example of that. But in Majora's Mask, it's even less of an amount of time. It's just 3 days. That's it. You got 3 days. Save the world.
Also, another thing about Majora's Mask that kind of makes it unique compared to horror games is that horror games are kind of going out of their way to scare you and frighten you. But when you look at a game like Majora's Mask, like, all of these characters have sort of a dark backstory to them, but they don't actually go out of their way to tell you that story. So as a player, you're going through, and if you kind of dig a little deeper and kind of discover those stories on your own, it's kind of like this delayed, oh wow, that's actually really dark sort of a dynamic.
Right.
And I think that's really interesting.
My favorite games actually have that in common. It's my 2 favorite games ever, Metroid Prime and Majora's Mask, and both games share the whole, like, you can learn as much about this game as you want. Like, there's certain things in Majora's Mask that you have to do, certain quests that are necessary, but you never really have to do the Anju quest with the couple's mask. Like, you don't have to do the postman thing. You can sort of do as much as you want. And one of the interesting things about how this game sort of approaches the storytelling is that the more you learn, kind of the more real it gets. And I think that's what makes it so scary, is that you feel like the more you learn about the characters, the more you feel like you're involved in the game world, which makes you feel like, holy crap, I have to go stop this moon from crashing into the earth, or we're all gonna die.
Right.
And you think your problems are bad now? Well, think about how bad they're gonna be in 3 days.
Right. And it's like you get to know all of these characters, so you're kind of more invested in them, because it's kind of like it's like getting to know your friends, right? So then you're worried not only for yourself, but all of these people that you've met and kind of grown close to. Now you have to save the world for their sake as well.
It's funny how no Zelda game has, like, ever done NPCs as well as Majora's Mask has. Like, it hasn't even really been close. I mean, people like to say Skyward Sword had really good NPCs. I still don't think it's close.
Mm-hmm. No.
And even that game had a similar system to the Bomber's Notebook. It had the gratitude crystals. So it had, like, similar, like, almost mission.
Yeah, but the missions were so, like, corny, compared to Majora's Mask.
Yeah, Majora's Mask was a much more dark tone, and I love that. I love everything about that game. There's, like, I can't find a fault in it.
I mean, that's definitely what makes it my favorite Zelda game.
Okay, no more gushing. Let's talk about other things. Let's talk about other things that make the game kind of scary and unnerving. I think scary is kind of the wrong word to use.
I think so.
I think I think unnerving is a good word. Creepy, kind of, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that makes it darker is the fact that all of the music in the game, it doesn't feel as triumphant as some of the music in other Zelda games. Like the main theme, like the Termina Field theme, it's just the original theme, but it's not quite the same. There's something a bit weird or off about it. Like there's a dark tone.
It's the xylophone, man.
Yeah,
it's the xylophone.
That thing, and before it repeats, there's like that part where it gets dissonant.
Yeah,
it's really cool, and all of the areas, all 4 areas, have this weird, really creepy music.
Yeah,
and once you fix the area, it doesn't like sound happy again. It sounds like the creepy Termina Field music again. So there's no like sense of actual, like nothing gets resolved until you actually beat the game. I mean, what other songs do you think ingrain that message of creepy?
Well, it's like you said, the Termina Field music, I think, is one of the best themes in Zelda games, just because it's so. It's like you said, there's just something about it, and it's different from the original, just enough to like kind of give you the picture of what the original was, but then it adds its own dynamic to it. It makes it's very much its own song, which I think is really cool, and it really fits the mood of that game.
What
I love the you go ahead.
What's interesting for me is that the first Zelda game I ever played was Ocarina of Time, and that overworld didn't have the original theme to it. It had its own. So when I played Majora,
I think it was the first Zelda game to not have that theme, by the way.
Well, Zelda 2, but it didn't.
That's right.
But
Zelda 2 doesn't count itself.
But when I played Majora's Mask, that's the first time I ever heard that melody. And so when I think of that game, or when I think of that melody, I kind of actually go back to Majora's Mask before I go to Link to the Past, which is probably not common, but that's my little take on it. It's Majora's Mask before it's Link to the Past for me, or even the original game.
That's interesting. I never really identified it as either. I just sort of like, because I can identify the melody, like, that's the Termina Field one, that's the original one. But anyway, back to the original discussion about music. I think there's a lot of even the Ocarina songs in the game, like in Ocarina of Time, a lot of the songs were kind of like almost royal sounding, I guess would be a good word for it. But in Majora's Mask, it's just you have like the Song of Healing, and some of the songs are like they make a return, like the Song of Storms and the Song of Time. But it's a lot more somber. A lot of them. The Song of Healing is one that I feel like is really one that kind of sets the mood for the game. It just sounds really sad, and it's just a sad, creepy, disturbing, dark game. And man, I love Majora. I love it so much.
Can't stop.
I can't stop gushing.
I mean, speaking of the Song of Healing, I mean that dynamic of the game where you have these characters who are kind of like ghosts haunting the world, and they can't get like the final resting, like that peace that they really want, because there's something about their life that didn't get like completed, something that you need to help them with. I don't know if you haven't seen the movie Ghost Town. I think that's what it's called, where there's all these characters in the city that are dead and they're ghosts, and this one guy can see them. But the only way to get them to actually have peace and go away from being a ghost is to fix whatever problem they left in the world. And I think that's an interesting dynamic, and it's very creepy. It's very Halloween. Ghosts.
That concept reminded me of the Bomber's Notebook. Ironically, he's got to fix all the problems or whatever. One of the other things about that is that it kind of reminds me of like the Twilight Zone, I guess. Not just the Song of Healing, I guess, but the whole game really. If you ever watch the Twilight Zone, basically you just have this like alternate dimension where weird things happen, and just a lot of strange problems, I guess. And Majora's Mask has a lot of those same elements. I almost feel like they were maybe partially inspired by either that or science fiction, anything, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, who knows what inspires these guys, right? I mean...
Yeah. Man, I love Majora's Mask. Such a good game.
Good.
By the way, if you haven't played Majora's Mask, what are you waiting for? It's on the Wii Virtual Console. Just go play it. Like, it's $10. It's unbelievable. I'd buy it for you if I had money, you know?
Yeah.
Leave a comment and I'll buy it for you, and you'll enjoy it and you'll love it.
Or you might hate it,
because
but who knows?
No, you won't hate it. There's no one hates Majora's Mask. Does anyone out there actually not like Majora's Mask who's like played all the way through it? And I leave a comment if you do, because I.
That is a good point. Like all of the people I've ever spoken to who say they don't like it, they've never actually finished it. Like I feel like maybe part of what makes you appreciate Majora's Mask is like how it feels when you get to the end of the story. Like maybe.
Yeah, I feel like there's
a
completeness that comes with it, right? Like when you complete the game, like everything sort of gets tied together, especially when you actually take the time to do all the mask quests and to like solve everyone's problems. Like there's really just a feeling of general satisfaction, like, wow, I saved the world and I helped everybody. And that's actually one thing I wanted to talk about is in Majora's Mask, obviously there's 3 days. And you can't help everybody in 3 days. And even if you help everyone over the course of the story and over the course of the game, you're not actually helping everybody because everything resets when you go back in time, except for the things that are on Link's possession. So I think that's a pretty dark thing as well. Like even if you save the world and the moon from crashing, if you didn't help, the postman, like he's still going to be depressed. And he'll still be stuck in his job, forever if you didn't free him before you stop the moon from crashing into the earth, which I think is a really kind of dark turn to the series. Like, even if you actually save the world, you can't really do anything about everyone's problems.
Yeah, you can't, 100% all of the side quests in one single 3-day cycle, so somebody's always going to be left out in the cold.
And I know people have probably tried to do that because it's like, I bet I can do everything in 3 days. Well, you can, in theory, but you can't help the bomb shop woman and still get the couple's mask. So, she's either going to get robbed or Andrew's not going to get married,
right?
Or something.
Yeah.
So
it's messed up. It's messed up stuff.
Yeah.
It's a messed up.
But
game.
That's the world. That's the world.
Yeah, that's. I mean, it's definitely the most realistic depiction of what real life is like, right?
Yeah, any action anywhere can affect anyone at any time.
Right, and even if it's a good thing for somebody, it's a bad thing for somebody else.
It's the butterfly effect, right? It's a butterfly flaps its wing on another continent and creates a hurricane or tornado or whatever somewhere else. I don't really know how that works.
Yeah.
I don't think it's actually possible, but that's what I've understood what it is.
Speaking of Anju, do you say Anju? I don't. For some reason, I actually, ever since I was a kid, I pronounced her name Anju like it was a German J. I don't know what's wrong with me.
Yeah, I don't know. I always said Andrew just because I'm American and I don't know how to pronounce things.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I don't know what.
So I mean, we had a fun we had a fun discussion before the podcast about like how to pronounce certain words. We couldn't decide on how to pronounce Andrew's fiance's name. The guy who gets turned into the kid, so we just decided just not to use his name on the show.
I mean,
and there were
if you take like Japanese vowel pronunciations, I think the closest you'll get with like an American accent is cafe, but we don't have to say it. Whatever. Oh, who actually agrees on the pronunciation of Zelda names anyway?
Yeah.
It's not like there's voice acting in the game to tell you how to say it.
Leave a comment if you know how to pronounce it, and then we'll probably believe you. I don't know.
Or we'll just stick to our guns because we're stubborn.
I don't even have guns. I was perfectly willing to alter my pronunciation if it was the wrong one. I'm totally okay with it. Okay, let's move on.
Yeah, let's talk about some of those characters for a bit.
Yeah.
We got a list here of some of our favorites, and top of the list here is the Gorman brothers. And
okay, so let's sort of give a little bit of background. The Gorman brothers, I can't remember the names of them specifically, but two of them are at the ranch. They have their own like kind of race track where you race them later in the game, and then they I guess we can talk spoilers. I guess it doesn't really matter. If you don't like spoilers, turn off the show. But you race them later, and then later you protect the milk bottles from being smashed. And then, of course, they have their brother who lives in the city who's trying to put together a performance team. Is that right? For the carnival? Something like that?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought his backstory was really interesting and unique because he's very depressed. Probably because his life sucks. I don't really know, but you find him in the milk bar and he's just like drinking, and then he starts crying and he like tears off his face and gives it to you or something.
Yeah, how do you end up getting
Never
that
mind.
mask? I don't remember.
I don't know. What is the circus leader's mask? How does it cry real tears? I don't understand how this game works, but You have anything to say about the Gorman brothers?
Not a ton. You're the one who put them on the list, so I'll just leave
I put them on the list because I thought it was interesting, and they're the one group of characters in this game that I actually felt that the story was kind of underdeveloped. I wanted to know more about them, but it just didn't seem like there was a whole lot to say, or a whole lot that was said, I should say. So that was disappointing. But I do like the Gorman brothers. I like the idea of kind of making up your own story if you don't totally understand everything. Mm-hmm. So I look at him as just this really depressed guy whose brothers hate him because he went to move to the city instead of being a country boy like they are. Right. I guess
all 3 Luigis.
Yeah, all 3.
And then another interesting set of characters is the guards and the carpenters in Clocktown, who are at odds with each other because the carpenters are like, oh, what? It's not gonna actually fall. It's the moon. Why would the moon fall? That makes no sense. But I mean, the carpenters
never mind
are clearly
the fact that it appears
here.
to be moving. Never mind the fact that it appears to be moving closer every single moment.
Yeah.
So obviously the carpenters are pretty stubborn about everything.
Right.
And the guards are just like, let's get out of here.
The law enforcement.
They can't actually leave. They can't actually leave because that's their job, you know. And it's similar to the postman, who we'll talk about later.
Yeah, and then the mayor, who's basically spineless and he can't decide what to do. He's supposed to be leading the town, but he doesn't. Who elected this guy? Seriously.
He's being held hostage by bureaucrats in the carpenters union.
Yeah,
and
there you go.
Guards union.
This is not a commentary on capitalist society or anything.
That's where unions will get you. The moon will crash on the earth, and you'll have no one but unions to blame.
Yep. Moral of the story.
Something like that.
Yeah. Also, third on the list is Anju's grandmother and mother. And you're the one who actually mentioned the grandmother, and I'm curious as to why you decided to mention her.
Do you want to go up the family lineage? Because each character has like something that we can talk about.
True.
We can go Anju,
I mean,
and then,
So first there's Anju, and she's engaged to somebody who Skull Kid cursed to be a kid again. So she doesn't know where her fiance went. And her mother is like, oh, Cafe just left you. Cafe, whatever. So just leave town. Go without him. He's no good for you or whatever.
He's a jerk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's holding on to hope.
He's the spiegel of Majora's Mask.
But she's obviously dedicated to staying in town until she finds her fiance. So I think that's an interesting, also dark conflict. All these characters have these conflicts, these tiny mini conflicts that you have to solve.
Yeah, and the reason I put Anju's grandmother on the list is because I thought it was really interesting how she is kind of a two-faced character. When Anju's in the room, she pretends to be like this senile old like hag, I guess. But as soon as she leaves, it's interesting because she becomes very sharp-witted and like she's like, oh, you know, I hate. Did you ever read her diary in the hotel room?
I don't think so, but now that you mention it, I never actually like put that like 2 and 2 together about that. Like she seems really senile, but then she also tells you like this really long-winded story. So how can she do both, right?
Well, old people always do that anyway. But I mean, if you go in the hotel room and you look in her diary, she says a lot of very interesting things about like how she doesn't like her daughter's cooking and like how she'll like pretend to be asleep when she comes in the room. And I'm like, well, that's depressing. So clearly, like she hates her daughter or something. So that's I thought that was interesting.
The women in that family do not get along.
That's one of the that's one of the more realistic aspects, I guess. But that's one of the stories that I felt like was not really resolved as well. And I kind of like that they did that in some instances. Like with this one, I like it. With the Gorman Brothers, I don't really like it because I don't feel like we got enough information. But with this one, I felt like it gave you just enough to kind of fill in the gaps. And it became a really interesting kind of sub-story, the relationship of that family and, of course, Anju with her new husband.
Yeah.
And seeing how everyone reacted to that. So let's move down the list again.
Oh, goodness. Next on the list is Tingle.
Oh, boy.
Everyone's favorite green person. I mean, what can you say about Tingle? I mean, everyone knows Tingle. Everyone hates Tingle, right? Or do they?
You can say that Tingle is the best green jumpsuit wearing character in Zelda history.
He's definitely a polarizing character. You either love him for some reason, or you think he's like the worst thing ever.
I never really understood all the hate for him personally. Like, I don't love him, but he's like, you know, like in the first game, he's just like a weird guy. I think most of the hate stems from Wind Waker, to be honest, where he became like this creepy weirdo.
There's a criminal.
But in Majora's Mask, it was like, oh, he's just this funny guy who like writes maps and is on a balloon.
Yeah.
I don't know.
These designers, they come up with the weirdest characters.
Like, what were they thinking when they came up with this? Like, what if we just had a guy who like wanted to be a fairy, and then he would like go up and float in a balloon because he liked to fly because he wanted to be a fairy, and like he writes maps for a living,
and then overcharges for them.
Like, can you imagine being the guy who pitched that to whoever directed that game? Yeah, we're gonna do this. Yeah, it's like the guy who came up with the knife that can cut a penny. It's like, yeah, we need this. We need this in the game.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, there's definitely a lot of eccentric characters in the Zelda franchise in general, but yeah, I think he like takes the cake for sure.
Oh yeah.
Next on the list is this story, this particular
you like this one a lot.
Is, I think, really well developed. Crimea and Romani at the Romani Ranch. I always thought it was really dark how at the end of the 3-day cycle, when if you didn't actually, save the world, which obviously then you lose the game or whatever, you start over. But
right.
Crimea, the older sister, she gives Romani her first bottle of Chateau Romani, which is apparently this game's equivalent of like an alcoholic beverage. It gives you magic powers, infinite magic. But I think it's like, oh, so I'm gonna actually like dull your senses so that when the moon crashes, you won't feel the pain. I think that's a really sad story in particular. And then if you fail to ward off the alien invaders, the random alien people with the flashlight eyes, then Romani's like, "What? Who are you?" Like she completely lost her memory, her cognition is broken or something. I don't know.
That is really disturbing. And the whole. And by the way, is there any more stressful of an event in that game than trying to ward off all those aliens?
Yeah, I know.
Like you're running around like, oh crap, where are they? Like if you didn't buy the map from Tingle, you're screwed. Like because you have to just keep running around, and man, that's
Actually, looking back at that particular point, when I was a kid, it was definitely stressful because I was like riding around on my horse trying to hit these guys. But actually, the best thing to do is just stand on the crate. And you can hit them.
Pop the bunny hood on and just run around.
You don't even have to run around. You can just stand on the crate. You can hit everybody from all of their vantage points from that crate. You don't have to.
Even the ones behind the barn and everything. Yeah. Wow, I didn't know that.
So, a little trick there for all you people who haven't played the game yet. There you go. There's our first little tidbit. The Moon Kids.
Next one.
The Moon Kids.
The Moon Kids.
Oh man, one of the most esoteric sets of characters. They never actually explain what the heck is going on here, but they look exactly like a little version of the Happy Mask Salesman. What's with that? Are they real?
I would assume that they are, unless.
Or are they like some sort of?
This is when you start delving into the This is when you start kind of delving into the lore of the game, in which like you have to figure out like what is Majora's Mask. Who is this Majora person, and like what does this mask actually do?
Right.
Can it create apparitions? Like, or can obviously it has the power to curse people. So I would assume that it can create these kids, and if it's questions that the owner of the mask is asking, because how each kid like asks a series of kind of disturbing questions at the end of their little dungeon. If the mask owner wants to know the answer to these questions, then like what are the kids? Are they? I don't know.
And they never tell you. There's so many things. There's so many questions that go unanswered when you play this game. Like, why the heck is there a big field with a giant tree apparently inside the moon, which, according to game theory, is not that big? So what's going on here? There's like some sort of weird twisted dimension or something?
Are we clear? Well, the whole game is a twisted dimension, but are we clear that the fact that this moon is not the actual moon, right? This is a moon that was created by the Skull Kid? Is that correct?
I don't know, actually. I mean, there is no other moon in the sky, is there?
Not during the game, but I always just assumed that it was being blocked out by the much bigger, scarier moon.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. I mean, obviously, like, before Skull Kid was in the picture, did the moon always have a face on it? That's another thing.
I don't know. I mean, there's just so much to talk about.
So many questions.
This game is so good. I love this game. I'm sure there's theories out there on the internet because it's the internet. But I did not read any of them prior to this podcast, so I'm not really prepared to talk about stuff like this. Besides, we got way off topic anyway because we were supposed to be talking about the Moon Kids.
But yeah, the Moon Kids are creepy. That's
that's
all I have to say about it.
Yeah. And it always made me sad to like give away my masks at the end of the game.
Yeah,
like,
that's true. It's like all my hard work, and I just have to give them to this stranger who looks like the creepy man, who's also a stranger that lives in the clock tower and doesn't eat or sleep. I mean,
yeah.
But next on the list, the postman. We kind of talked about the mayor already, so we'll skip that.
Mr. Postman.
The postman is probably one of the other more developed characters. He's like this guy who's way too diligent about his job, and he won't leave town because he has letters to deliver. Which is
he's basically the game's version of Hex.
Yeah, the workaholic.
Just super devoted. Yeah. And he won't leave town because he hasn't gotten the orders, and the whole game you're just like, man, are you crazy? Just get out of here, you know? Of course, it's never really that big of a concern because the moon never crashes into the earth, assuming that you play the game right.
Yep.
So, you know.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like every time you see that cutscene where the moon crashes, but then you rewind time, so it never actually did. So I guess that kind of softens it a bit, but
a little bit, but it's still dark to think about that this guy like is just willing to just die because he wants to do his job right, which I think is, I mean,
there's no one in town to deliver letters to, so what's the point? No one's gonna get their letters. No one's gonna but check their mail. They're gonna be dead.
Nobody goes to eat at my restaurant, but like I still have to go work there, so you know.
Well, I don't know if that's a very good comparison.
No, I mean, you know, delivering mail is not the same profession as serving fast food, and especially now when the moon's going to crash.
Well, our moon isn't crashing. I mean, last I checked, I haven't looked outside.
Let's.
Actually, look outside. Look out! No, just kidding.
No, it's just raining here. Yeah. Never mind.
It's raining in California, in Fresno.
I think it is actually right now. Oh, don't give too much away. I don't want them to know that I live in.
Isn't there a drought in California or something?
Yes, there is. It's very bad. Don't you hear about it on your news every single moment of every single day? Because that's all we ever hear about.
Nope, not.
Okay, let's get back on topic. If there ever was a topic, let's get back on it.
That's the end of the list of characters that we have.
Oh shoot! Okay, that's all we wrote.
So
that's all we have.
I don't know if there is much else to talk about here.
One thing I did want to bring up, other references to Halloween, since it's still Halloween where I am, and also where Hex is, but probably not by the time this gets uploaded. This game I also always consider to be a Halloween game just because you got masks, 24 different masks to put on and try on and just run around in, and it's fun, you know. It's like you're a kid and you're running around in your mask. And also, the game was released in America on October 26th in 2000, so very close to Halloween. So I've always sort of associated with that.
Yeah, I bet there's a lot of people who went out and bought the game like launch day, release day, and played it during their kind of Halloween night, and was creeped out by all the creepy things that happened. Especially as a kid. Like, this game was a lot scarier as a kid than it is now. I mean, I still think about it, and there's creepy things about it, but I'm not actually, like, frightened. But when I was a kid, it was quite frightening, actually.
I think the art design is just fantastic in this game for just setting you up for this kind of just this creepy atmosphere that just pervades through the whole game.
Yeah, especially like
you would know a lot about that.
Art assets from Ocarina, which was a very bright game. So that's
that was the other thing that was really weird is that they basically ripped everything out of Ocarina of Time, just placed it in a new game, and people were like skeptical about it. And I can totally understand why. Because imagine if they were to do like a sequel to Skyward Sword and just took like everything from that game and just put it in a new game.
Yeah.
Like, would you think that game would be any good?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that when I was a kid, people kind of made fun of Majora's Mask. Like, oh, they were too lazy to make new characters. But I mean, the narrative kind of explains away the fact that there's all these really familiar faces because it's kind of an alternate dimension, right? Like
it's a complete 360, if you will.
It's a parallel universe, I guess. Where all of these people have like representations of themselves in another dimension, and you kind of when you enter from the Lost Woods into the clock tower, you have this like really swirly effect. It's like you're kind of. I always think of it like the two worlds are kind of like if you flipped yourself around and then put yourself underground, you'd be in Termina or something like that. I don't know.
It reminds me of Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
And also, yeah. So there's a lot of similarities there too. Maybe that's for another episode, but there's many things that you could consider.
I have to wonder how many actually like legitimate inspirations there were from these other, like, was the Twilight Zone or was Alice in Wonderland actually one of their active inspirations when they made the story? I don't know. I mean, Miyamoto is a fan of bluegrass, which always throws me for a loop. Like, bluegrass in Japan, is that a thing?
Bluegrass music in Japan? I don't think so.
Well, Miyamoto's a fan of bluegrass, so.
Well, that's. How do you know this? Where did you say
this? I read this somewhere on the internet, and that means it's true.
Oh, so you know it's true. Absolutely. Okay, well, I know Hext is hosting right now, but we are running again very long. But
we can't seem to keep a short episode, can we?
Well, the game is so dang good, we can't help it.
That's true.
So we're not going to get to a user question this week because, in the interest of time, blah blah blah.
Which is a pity because we actually had a lot of user questions ready, but
we'll do a bunch next week. We got a big show next week too. So
as always. All right, so this has been a blast, and for spigelwii and nobody else, this is HextupleyooDOT, and we'll see you guys next time.
Good night.